we go. All right, so to kind of give you guys a little bit of an overview, so our next project coming up is going to be something like this here. Okay, this is kind of what we're looking at for our next project. So, a couple different examples, and there's a whole bunch on DeviantArt for you to kind of think about. This is a slightly unfinished one that I like to use for the example. So what you're going to do is this. You're going to think of a 4-letter word, preferably something that is school appropriate and doesn't begin with the letter F. But you're going to think about, yeah, thanks. Thank you. Ar, har, har. So you're going to think about a 4-letter word, okay? And that letter word could be anything you want. It can be an abbreviation. It can be your initials with an exclamation point. It can be whatever you want. But you think of 4 singular letters. We're going to get out you can see a smaller piece of paper than we normally utilize, a little bit smaller. And you're going to go ahead and divide that into 4 different quadrants, okay, 4 different pieces. Now, what's going to end up happening is each one of the letters of your 4-letter word is going to go into one of the squares. We're going to talk about composition, about how you can kind of rotate and enlarge those letters or shrink them down or anything like that. We're going to talk about font, and we'll talk more about that tomorrow in our lecture, but we're going to talk about font and typography, basically different types of fonts and how they work, what the hell a serif is. Fun fact, it's this little foot thing. And we're going to have different kind of regulations for these letters. So, for example, you might need 2 letters that are serif, 2 are the sans serif, and we'll get into all that stuff tomorrow. So we're talking about composition, we're talking about typography. We're also going to talk about different mediums. So 2 of your panels are going to be done using watercolors, 2 are going to be done using tempera paint. And again, that is more about introducing the mediums to you, as well as having you guys kind of learn to control those mediums. As some of you might have had with your propaganda posters, you might have found that, working with a particular medium was a little bit challenging because we hadn't really gotten to it yet. So we're going to kind of do all of that in this one singular project, all of which is going to have an extremely short deadline of like 3-ish days. So very, very small paper, very small project, just to kind of learn some key new principles and design ideas. So that's kind of where we're going. But to get to that point, we need to talk about how the hell to draw font properly. So that's what we're going to do today very quickly here. So what I've got is just a National Geographic, thank you by the way. And anytime you're reading a magazine or a newspaper or anything like that, there is a lot of different types of font in here, right? There are what's called, again, sans serif and serif. So serif being these little teeny tiny little feet things, right? Those little kind of like Times New Roman. Right? And then, let's see, a sans serif being something that's very geometric, very blocky, right? So, I'm going to deal just with the cover, because if you see, I've got a sans serif, this kind of blocky style, and a serif with the little feet, kind of a little more classical style. So I'm going to teach you how to draw some of these things as we go along. And you guys are welcome, absolutely welcome to follow along and kind of draw with me a little bit. If you think about the reason why we're doing this is, again, picking up where we left off with our last project, you might have had a hard time if you were drawing that font and just kind of doing like plain old bubble letters. So like in the past, maybe I wanted to do like the letter C, right? Well, in the past I would have thought maybe like, kind of like this, and I got to make it 3D, so it kind of looks like that. That's like a bubble letter, right? It's only so-so. Maybe you did one of these, and then you made it like bigger, right? Okay, that's fair, but it always ends up looking a little wonky. Or maybe you just didn't care at all and you just drew a line. That's fine too. So what we're going to be doing is moving beyond this kind of squiggly, outliney stuff and into a more constructivist, if you want to, or more geometric style of being able to build these letters using our blocking in principles. So let's go from there. So let's do, I don't know, you guys pick. You tell me. Out of this word here, we've got searching for Cleopatra. Pick one of those letters that looks difficult. P? Lowercase? Right there? Okay. All right, let's do the P. So here we go. I'll have you guys draw along with me if you don't mind. I'm going to use different colors to kind of help you out a little bit so we can see what the heck is going on. Okay, so I've got my colors here. All right, so let's start out. Okay, so I'm going to look at this letter P, right? Now, I'm going to imagine here that it kind of continues on down the page, because obviously it's going into her head. But I'm going to imagine that it kind of continues on down here. So the first thing I want to do is kind of imagine an overall just rectangle, a box, that kind of encapsulates the entire letter, right? So it's going to be something like this here. Just a big rectangle. Now, I could actually do some comparative measurement if I wanted to, do a little comparative measurement, and I could see like, okay, let's see, the width times the height, 1, 2, maybe, so it's 1 by 3, maybe? 1, 2.5. So I could probably make this a little bit bigger if I wanted to. So a pretty good rectangle. So we're going to do it 1 by 3. So I can fit this guy 1, 2, 3 times. Okay. Now, this basically becomes like a bounding box, right? I know that nothing is going to go outside of this box. So it kind of helps simplify down my drawing. So instead of grabbing my pencil and kind of like just, it's a letter P, I guess, like it gets too wonky junky, right? This is going to kind of keep everything nice and tight and geometric. So the next thing is I'm going to go through and start thinking about this letter P as a geometric form, right? So if I can only use those blocking in principles, right? I can only use squares, circles, and triangles. I want to go through and start thinking, how can I build this? How can I make that? So I've got a nice rectangle right here in the back. So I'm literally just going to cut it just like so. Notice I'm not really worried about making the letter P as much as I am kind of building the letter P by using geometric shapes. So I've got that kind of upwardly mobile there, kind of rectangular shape. And again, I could go through and even measure a little bit more. Let's see here. Take out a pen. So if I take the height and the width of this letter P, it looks like I've got 1, 2, 3. So this, in essence, becomes a third of my overall width. If that helps you think a little more geometrically, if you're a big fan of geometry, which is like -2 of you, so that's okay. So we've got a 1 by 3 rectangle, and then we divided up the top into thirds and made one of those thirds a big, strong rectangle. Okay, easy peasy. Next up. So now I want to think about how far down does my letter P come? And again, I'm imagining that it comes to about here, right about there. So I can, again, kind of do a little bit of comparative measurement. 1, 2, and 3. So it comes down about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, about 2. So if I had 2 lines here, just to kind of divide this up, 1, 2, 3. So my P is going to come down to about here-ish. You with me? So that rectangle now. So my circular letter P is going to be kind of right up in there somewhere. So you can see I'm using just basic math. I'm talking about halves, maybe a fourth. But I'm not really getting into, like, I'm not measuring anything. You don't have to. You really don't have to. As you do your actual project, you may want to use a ruler or a straight edge to get really nice, clean edges. But anything more than that, you just don't need to do. Eyeballing it is just fine. All right. So again, I'm going to use a little bit more eyeballing here. And I can see that the central circle in my letter P is, again, about a third of the overall width. So again, I'm just going to kind of imagine this comes down a little bit. So now I've got basically 3 rectangles, right? I've got 1, 2, and 3. Okay. All right, so kind of moving on now. If I look at this letter P, right? Let's see, I'll grab my pen again real quick. If I look at this letter P, and I actually kind of zoom in for a second here. Okay. So if we're actually looking right here, what you'll see is this thing is definitely a circle, right? But it's a circle that's offset. Does that make sense? It's offset. It's not inside this rectangle. Right? So I've got kind of a circle right there, and then this inner circle is off on the side. So really what I have is kind of like an olive, like an olive shape, right? So we're going to incorporate that kind of olive shape into our drawing. So back over here, I'm going to put a circle right there. And I might say, how do I know how big to make it? Well, all I'm doing is, if I know how to make a good circle, all I'm doing is taking the width, transforming that into the height. So it's the same wide as it is tall, and then I just curve those edges. Remember to sketch it out, okay? Do not give me a single perfect line. It's going to look like poopy. And don't give me shit lines either. We don't need those. Right? I don't need Chewbacca lines, and I do not need the perfect line ever. Now this P looks like it's going to Disney World. There you go. Oh boy. All right, good, excellent. I just got copyright infringement on YouTube. Okay, here we go. So we're just going to duplicate that down at the bottom. Same exact thing. Same width as the height. So now I've got like a really weird looking like letter F. Who? Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, like a tape cassette or something. Yeah, I'm with you. Do like a boom box? Yeah, I'm with you. All right, so we've got our two circles. Next up, so I'm going to switch my color real quick. So now I want to make that kind of olive shape, right? So I can get this inside circle. So all I'm going to do is put another circle, but this time, it needs to be the width of this central rectangle, because we already know how wide that is. So we need to make it the same width. And it's going to just touch the other side of my circle. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other side inverted. So like two googly eyeballs. Yeah, totally. Yeah. All right, so at this point, all of our blocking in is done. 100%, we're done, right? These 4 circles and 3 rectangles make up this entire letter P, right? Because all we're going to do now is basically darken in what we need. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of outline my inside here. So with the inside of my letter outlined and good to go. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to outline the circular part of my letter P. And again, in the future, whenever you're doing your actual project, you may want to use a ruler for this so you get nice straight lines. Right? And then I'm just going to outline my rectangle. And that's it. There's your letter P, equally competent to the computer-generated letter P. That's it. That's it. By using a little bit of blocking in, you can get really incredibly professional-looking letter forms and typography. Now, I will tell you this. A serif font, like this one here, is definitely pretty easy for blocking in, right? It's already very geometric. It's already, rectangles and circles and stuff. So we're going to do that's a sans serif. We're going to do a serif font here in a second, and then we'll wrap up for this demo, and we'll call it a day. So you've got your kind of blocked in form. So let's do this. First thing, let's make sure that this next letter we're about to do, let's make sure it's the exact same height as our first letter. So I'm just going to extend out my grid here. So I've got the same top, and the same bottom. And I don't know exactly how wide my letter is going to be, so I'll just kind of pull it out way larger than I need to. Okay, so again, I'm going to let you guys pick so you know that I'm not cheating or anything like that. So we've got National Geographic. Those are all serif because they all have these little tiny feet on the side. Think of the most challenging one, and let's tackle it. You guys pick. R, G, N. All right, so we got it down to 3. Who votes for N? 1, 2, 3. Okay, who votes for G? 1, 2, 3. 3 again. Okay, and who votes for R? More than 3. Okay, R it is. All right. So we'll do the R. So the R is going to be similarly constructed to how we just did our P, but it's going to be a little bit different because if you notice, the font is completely different, right? It's a completely different font. So here's what we're going to do. Let's look. So we've got this letter R. And if I think about blocking this letter R in, it's really got 2 pieces, right? I've got this kind of circle bit on the top half, and then I've got more of this triangular bit on the bottom half. So the first thing I need to do is figure out where the hell is my middle point, right? So I'm just going to take my letter P that I already know. I already know where my top and my bottom are. That makes things pretty easy. Now, I could go through and actually like measure and see, okay, let's see, half of that and half. It's dumb. Let's just eyeball it. So it's somewhere, I don't know, here-ish. That looks about the middle. I'm just going to draw a little soft line right there so I kind of know what's going on. So I know that the top half is going to be this kind of circular bit. The bottom is going to be this kind of triangular bit. So let's figure out, again, the back side of my letter R, just similar to that letter P, right? Got this nice chunked rectangle right there. So let's just put that on. So we're going to say it's about there. And again, I'm going to eyeball it a little bit. Let's say it's about there. So I'm just making a nice rectangle about yay big. Okay. And again, you may in the future want to use a ruler, but for right now we're just learning. All right. Now, the next step is going to be very, very similar to the last, right? So look, if I take this width, if I take that width of my letter R, I can take that, let's see, 1, 2, and about 3. So it's basically the same as it was before. Looks like this foot comes a little bit out right there. So we'll have to remember that whenever we get to that foot right there. But everything else basically is, again, the same idea. We've got thirds to deal with. So I'm going to take a different color real quick. Got 1, 2, and 3, and I'm just going to divide this up into thirds so that I can easily see where all that stuff is going to go. So it's not that I necessarily need these rectangles, but they're going to help me line things up very simply and easily. Okay. All right. So let's do the top part first. So I've got this curve. If I get rid of this triangle on the bottom, really that just becomes a very, very small letter D. Right? That's all it is. I've got a nice straight piece right here and a curved bit right here. And that curved bit is nothing more than a half of an overall circle. Right? So I know that it has to touch here, my big circle, I mean. And I know that it wants to go back, and I need the halfway point. So I'm going to need to take it back a little bit more. So let's just do that. So make a big kind of circle point. I'm making sure to touch right there. I'm just curving it around. If you need to, or if you want to, make the whole circle. Who's stopping you? If that helps. Make the whole circle. So we got a rectangle. We've got a big circle or a curved half a circle, depending on how you want to see it. So I'm going to do the exact same thing real quick, but this time, again, we want to look. This time you can see it's pretty thin toward the top and toward the bottom, and much, much thicker toward the sides. So I want to take that into account a little bit. So let's see. It looks like that thickness is just shy of a third. So we'll go in just a little bit, make a little mark right there to help us out. And if we know this is the top, we know this is the bottom. I'll make another little mark, kind of thinner right there, and I don't know, right there. Again, this is still eyeballing it. I'm still eyeballing it. So a little mark right here, a little mark right here. So basically I've kind of said, okay, it's got to come in here, and it has to come out to there. So I've got 1, 2, 3, almost like a, you could imagine, and you don't have to do this, but you could imagine like a triangle form. So all I'm going to do is round that out real quick, very easily. Again, you could use kind of a little bit of oh shitty lines right there, or I could just do a nice big circle. And again, it's almost like a really big, for helping out, it's almost like a really big olive, or like a crescent moon shape. Okay, so I've got the top, looking pretty good. Now let's move down to that triangle piece. So again, let's see here real quick. So it looks like, if I take this third all the way down, it looks like that triangle piece comes in just a little bit closer. So let's see. So I'm going to make a little mark right about here. About halfway in my middle. About there. Okay. Then again, I'm going to reference back. Looks like that comes a little bit away from a third right there. So again, I'm going to make another mark, I don't know, about here. So just a little bit off from my 1/3 piece. Just a little bit off. Looks like it's about the same thickness as my back line. So I've got this line here and this line here, and they're about the same thickness. So I'm just going to kind of duplicate that. So about the same thickness as my weird bony finger. I'm going to take that straight down. Remember that it goes just a little bit outside, and that's going to fit just about perfectly right there. Just a little bit outside of my my 1/3 there. So that'll help you with your angle. So we've got 2 legs, a little bit of a crotch right there, and then it comes up and around. Awesome. All right, so at this point, we've got a really good sans serif letter R, but what we need to do before we start darkening everything in, what you need to do is add on those serifs, okay? So if you look, I've got a little tiny foot up here at the top, so all I'm going to do is this, extend it out, and curve it around. Almost like there, you could imagine there's another circle right here. Like that, like a little fin. I'm going to do the same exact thing on the bottom down here. If you need to, draw little tiny circles. They often help. So I'm going to extend out that bottom and then scoop it on up. And then even though you can't 100% see it, there's actually a little bit on this front piece as well. So we'll do the same thing right there and scoop that out. So he's got a little fin right there, a little fin right there, and 2 finners right down there. So just like our letter P, whenever I'm all done, I'm going to go ahead, darken them up. Come up, little crotch, come on down, scoop it out, Scooby-Doo. And tighten it up. Donezo, right? So I've got a P, a letter R, all done in a very short amount of time. So we're going to pick up with that